first chance I've got to actually use the bandsaw on an actual project and not just test cuts. So right now I'm just going through and laying out all of these different all the different cuts, and then I'll take it over to the bandsaw and cut those out. Because these are bandsaw cuts, they don't have to be super accurate. Doing it on my surface plate actually just seems to make it a little bit easier. The scribe on here works really well, so I can set my distances and scribe them out really easily. But really, you could do this with a tape measure and a pen, and it'd work just as well. Kind of a fun little tool I found in a toolbox. When I have something here like this guy, this measurement's 1 1/16. The 1/16 is, of course, 0.625, but if I don't know that right off the bat, and he just uses that little tilting thing, so you can just tilt it and see the fractional or the decimal equivalent. Makes for pretty quick and easy conversions. So here I've got 6 3/8 plus 1 1/16. 3/8 and 1/16 is going to be, 7/16. I don't know that one off the top of my head. Find 7/16, 0.4375. Four, 3, 7, and about a half. That's a 15-degree angle. Alright, I got that part laid out. Let's head over to the bandsaw and cut it. Off camera, I went ahead and cut up all the rest of these parts. So I still have not drilled and tapped them yet. And I haven't done any of the grinder work on them yet. And actually this one needs to be chopped down. This one was around there. You cut that guy off and I'll be right back. Much better. Alright, next we're taking all of this to the grinder and cleaning up some of these parts. So the blade in the bandsaw was way too big to actually make these round. So I can take those to the grinder, and then the rest of it will just be kind of deburring and cleaning up the mill scale for that welded edges. Like that. I still have a little bit of grinding cleanup to do, but it's super hot right now, so I'm going to let it cool down for a little while. I got some other things to clean up here in the shop, and I'll get back to this in just a minute. Alright, so I got this guy welded together and then cleaned up on the grinds. Next up, this guy's going to get welded right here. I gotta make sure he's good and square and everything. It should be about 2 inches 20 thou, and a little over that, 2 inches 28 thou. So I got plenty of face-off material. And then here I still got well over 2 1/4, almost 2 3/8. So I can go ahead and do the same thing. I'm not going to bother with it on camera. Just got to bore out the bearing race here. So we'll come back when it's time to flip these guys around and get them indicated and ready for boring on the other side. So I just parted off the second one. Now I'm going to swap out the 3-jaw chuck for the 4-jaw so that I can get these mounted up and bored out, faced off, chamfered, bored, and cleaned up on the inside. So I've got one side's done. Now I'm ready to do the other side. Made up these quick copper shims and then indicated the wheel in here so it's nice and concentric. Now I can go ahead and bore out the bearing seat. Alright, so I gave these bearings about 1 thou to 1 thou and a half press fit. So I'm over here at the press. I'm pressing in this side, and then I've got a spacer that I'll put in here, and then I'll press in the other side. I just got to cut that spacer off for the right size. So I'm getting one side in, I'll put the spacer in, measure it, and then cut that off. But here I'm just pressing these bearings in. Alright, I got those done. Now I can measure the... Alright, so I got this switch added into here. And it's a single throw or single pull double throw switch. So both lines of the 220 go into the switch and then out of the switch, so it cuts off all of the power to it. So that Baldar motor back there, nice and quiet and smooth. One part of this that did give me a bit of a scare when I first assembled everything here. Unfortunately, I wasn't videotaping as I should be. Could not get the belt to track. No matter how much I adjusted this guy here, he was always drifting in this way and ended up rubbing on the post down there, and ended up going through the whole thing and re-squaring all of the different parts, and found I'd actually welded this guy on skewed just a little tiny bit in one direction. So it is extremely important, of course, that everything is lined up and square. But unfortunately, I'd missed this one. So what I ended up having to do is I ground it all the way off of here, lined it all back up square, and then welded this back on, just tacked on right now. So it's got 3 points. So it's actually fairly solid. But after this video, I'm going to go ahead and weld that back up and just fill in all of these little gaps here. But the most important part was, making sure that this ends up being extremely square, or at least square in line with the other wheels. And it was just twisted just enough where there wasn't enough adjustment here. And even if there was enough adjustment, the belt would have been so cockeyed from the amount of adjustment that I needed that it wouldn't have run well as it was. I set it up over here in my grinding area, which works out good. I had a drawer here which was all of my rubber gloves and different PPE stuff. I just moved that drawer down one and put an empty drawer here. I had an empty drawer over there. Now it's a good place for me to store belts, and it's right here next to everything. So I can grab belts out. The way this thing is set up, it's actually extremely easy to take belts on and off. And that's pretty much it. Now there's a belt on it. Turn it on, put it in forward, start it up. Alright, so it's actually probably at least a week, maybe 2 weeks later, but I've gotten everything painted and reassembled, and it's actually completed. The last part that I was waiting on was this guy here, and he just came in and I've got him in place. So basically the grinder itself is completed. The one last modification that I do need to do, I'm going to move this down and chop the top of this off so that the belt will clear when I tilt it, because I just kind of spaced that one particular part so when this lays over, the belt hits the variable frequency drive. But that's relatively small. I just need to move down and drill and tap some holes, and I'll probably be doing that this weekend. I'm not going to bother filming that, but I had to do a little bit of reinforcement on the I-beams because they were actually a little bit wobbly. So it's still wobbly now because I haven't actually bolted it down. I've got the parts. I do have to drill holes in the bottom and then sink into the concrete and get that, but I haven't decided 100% if it's going to stay exactly right here. So I'm kind of haven't done that yet. For the most part, it seems to work pretty well right here. The only thing I am worried about is all the tooling up here. Anything that falls out, hits the belt, could cause problems. Otherwise, let me bring a handheld and kind of give a little bit of an overview of everything up close. Alright, so as you can see, everything up under here got painted, and it actually came out looking really nice. So I've got a lot of the cool features, like the table's actually adjustable up and down. And then I've got, the levers here so that the table can slide in and out easily. That makes it easy for, changing the belts and whatnot. Got, I added the power switch. You can go in right up to the belt and lock it down there. Everything's good and solid. Well, third time's a charm, I guess. I've tried to shoot this video, this is the third time, and I've had technical difficulties each time. And I would go up and I'd get everything ready, and I would get ready to publish a video, and I'd review, and find out the mic was dead, had no audio, or something was wrong. So hopefully we can get it right this time. It's actually been a while now, and I've actually had quite a bit of use of the belt grinder, because I've been putting off reshooting this video. Of course, having technical difficulties, having everything all ready to go, it's a pretty major demotivator to actually go back and reshoot everything. So this is probably going to be kind of a quick and dirty review. Belt sander is all up and going, got everything in place. Runs rather well. All of the parts are working. I'm going to go ahead and bring you in a little bit closer so we can do a review of all of the different features that I've added to it. So far I've actually pretty close to worn out this particular belt, doing quite a bit of different grinding and stuff, so there won't be a whole lot of demo I can do on that. I'll do a little bit, but it's not as aggressive as it was when it was new. I've actually ordered some more belts, so all I have is this one, and I have some finer grip ones as well. Going through some of these guys here, these latches I've ordered off of Amazon. I'll have links to the ones that I've picked up down below, but these are nice because they're repositionable, so you can make it so it's out of the way. They'll lock into place and then open and close. Allows it to slide in and out pretty easily. These ones are 1/2 inch 13. This one's the 3/8. I forget whatever the bolt is, but you can order them in different versions. So originally I had mounted this up a lot higher, and of course that interfered with this belt coming down. So I've moved that down. I just cut off the mount here, moved everything down, drilled and retapped these holes, and mounted everything up. So it works really well down there. Only thing is a little bit of a safety concern, reaching down to hit these power buttons, because it is all right here. It's my unit. I'm fully aware of that, so I just have to keep that in mind whenever I'm doing any work on here. I did make a radius grinder and a 45-degree table, so I can kind of show how that is. This is my really heavy flat table. I've got this 45-degree which I'd actually offset it from the center specifically so it would be best usable while the table was in the horizontal view or horizontal position like this. I mounted it at a good 45-degree angle, but I didn't actually square it up real well this way. So I do need to actually recut this a little bit and resand it so it actually will sit up more flush against the belt. So this is my take on the radius grinder. I've got this little guy here, works as an adjustment screw. And this I just, only because the only bolt I had was a little bit too long, I just put a little spacer in there to hold it in place. So I can set it to the height. Bring it in, I can lock it down. Then, as seen, this particular piece here was ground on this guy. Was originally a 1/2" 13 bolt that I cut off, cut the threads down, and cleaned it all up, put a slit in it so I can put a screwdriver on it. That way I can size the outside of this so that this one, it happens to be a 1/2". This was a 1/2" hole, so it fits on there pretty well. I can come in to the depth that I want and then adjust this so I don't go past that depth. And then afterwards I can kind of tweak it a little bit as I'm going through. It leaves a really nice finish. When I did this specific one, everything was in the vertical, so all the grain is going this direction, but it makes for good smooth radiuses. Using this same setup here, I was able to take a bolt and turn it down to 3/8, put the same slit in it, and clean up the threads and everything. And that way I can pull this one out, drop this one in, and use it on anything with a 3/8 hole. Which that's actually a little bigger than 3/8 hole, but. And this way I've got a whole bucket full of 1/2" 13 bolts. I can always take those, cut them down, and make whatever size I need here. If I need a 1/4 inch, I can turn that down to a 1/4 inch and pop that out. And then I can just store all of these over here. I may make a little track and thread a bunch of 1/2" 13s so that I can actually keep those safe. But for now, that works fairly well. Changing the belt on this setup is actually really easy. Grab this guy, belt comes right off. Putting it back on is a little bit trickier, as you kind of got to feed it into the right spot on the bottom there. But basically line it up, pop it back into place. Adjust tracking here as needed. So I did end up changing. I've got a coil spring or a torsion spring down in here, and it was not quite enough power. I ended up, this spring I had in a box somewhere, and I just kind of bent it and bolted it into place. It's not perfect, but it's in place. It holds pretty well. And there's just a small hole down here, and then it's cramped between these two bolts up here. I can bend this around a little bit better, make this a little bit nicer. But all in all, that made for a much more rigid setup and allowed it to give me a good amount of tension on the belts. I also cut up a large I-beam. I'll post a separate video covering the build of the base that I did. It was kind of a fun build, cutting up a giant I-beam on the bandsaw.